Okay, before I talk about the show, I need to say, something that just jumped off the screen this week was the ridiculous, I repeat, ridiculous amount of pumped-in crowd noise. It seemed like every 5 minutes they were going crazy with that stuff. And yeah, WWE does this from time to time too, but when you're in a large arena, it's a lot less noticeable. And you can see that people aren't making this noise, but most of the audience is off camera, so you can just assume that's where it's coming from. But in a venue as small as the Impact Zone, where you can see pretty much the entire crowd, it doesn't work at all. It just becomes distracting. Now, I understand that it's getting harder and harder to get a reaction out of the Impact Zone fans, so this is probably necessary up to a point, but you've got to use it in moderation. And you're doing yourselves no favors when you overuse it that much, because it doesn't sound even remotely real. Now, once you get past that, I think this show was a noticeable improvement over recent weeks. Maybe it's the fact that Jeff Hardy's gone for the time being. Maybe it's the fact that the Jarretts have been mercifully de-emphasized since the Fayetteville shows. Maybe it's that the show is less cluttered than usual. Maybe it's a combination of those things. I don't know. But I thought this was an enjoyable show for the most part. I think something that helped this a lot was that they didn't try to do too much. The Morgan Hernandez and Samoa Joe Pope feuds were left off the show, and that gave them more time to work with than usual, so they were able to devote more to other stuff. The result being that things were more spaced out, and they didn't have segments constantly bleeding into each other for a change. Now, one thing that's been really noticeable with this show, especially lately, is their adherence to formula. Now, the shows always seem to be structured a specific way, starting out with a really, really long Immortal promo in quarter one and part of quarter two, and then around quarter five they usually have a knockouts match, and so on and so forth. Basically, they found a formula they liked, and by God, they were sticking with it. And I guess it was paying off ratings-wise somewhat, but it was also making the shows really listless and predictable. That changed this week, and I think that's part of the reason why I like this show more than usual. They started off with Sting, Anderson, and Van Dam instead of Immortal. It wasn't too long. It only went for about 10 minutes, which was just enough time to get the point across without dragging on and on and on like the Immortal promos tend to. And they managed to set up the cage match for the main event in a way that at least made it feel somewhat important. And yeah, you can certainly question the logic of giving away a cage match for free this close to lockdown, and I've done that plenty of times in the past. But I think in this situation, with this match, it made sense. Plus, it wasn't really much of a match anyway, but I'll get to that in a minute. After that, there was a series of rapid-fire interviews, and I like this. Maybe they were going a little bit too fast, but again, they're keeping the show moving at a brisk pace, touching on different characters. On any other show, we'd still have Immortal in the ring at this time, talking about the same redundant bullshit they talk about every single week. And if I have to choose, I'll take this over an Immortal promo any day. So they get the talking out of the way relatively quickly, and then, to my utter astonishment, they actually have a wrestling match within the first 20 minutes of the show. Which I will say was very refreshing after the totally no-action garbage we had to suffer through when they went like 77 minutes without having a single match. So it was very nice to see a little bit of wrestling this week. Not a lot, and not all of it was good, mind you, but more than we've been seeing lately. They had Scott Steiner versus Shannon Moore, which was dull and as slow as we've come to expect from Scott Steiner's matches these days. But I tolerated him going over because I'm not big on Shannon Moore, and when Steiner's on the screen, he brings Crimson with him. I have no idea why Crimson is tagging with Steiner and not Amazing Red, but that's TNA booking for you. So this was alright, but something that made it absolutely intolerable was Eric Young and Orlando Jordan being out there. Ha-ha! Apparently, these ratings-killing losers are going to be in a Four Corners tag team match at Lockdown for some ungodly reason. So that part sucked. But then the British Invasion showed up and beat the shit out of them, and it got better. Awesome that they finally found something for Magnus to do. I guess there's no timetable for Desmond Wolfe to come back, if he's even going to be able to come back at this point, I don't know. So, doing the British Invasion again in the meantime, that's cool with me. But that tag match at the pay-per-view is pretty much the most random thing you could imagine. It's Inc. versus the British Invasion versus Steiner and Crimson versus Eric Young and Orlando Jordan. How did that match even get booked? I don't fucking know. It's just one of those random, let's get as many people on the show as we can matches. And the second you add EY and Jordan to it, you destroy any chance it has of being taken seriously. I'm hoping the British Invasion go over, but that match will probably be my piss break. But here's something I don't get. Alex Shelley is apparently booked for this pay-per-view, so the Motor City Machine Guns are back. Awesome. Thank you. But instead of having them in the tag team match where they're much more valuable, you put them in the X Division Escape match, which already has way too many people in it. I think there's like 9 guys in there. That's just going to be a big clusterfuck. They should take the Machine Guns out of the Escape match, which would make it less cluttered, take EY and Jordan out of the tag team match and tell those ass clowns to go fuck themselves, then put the Motor City Machine Guns in the tag team match in their place. That would probably make both matches better. They had a Knockouts match with Winter versus Velvet Sky. It was a Velvet Sky match, so naturally it wasn't very good. At least Winter managed to not botch her finisher this time, but I really have not been impressed with her at all. It's weird, because I know Winter can wrestle. She's proven that in the past. But she hasn't shown it since she debuted. She hasn't had a single good match yet, and this stupid storyline of her drugging Angelina or casting some kind of magic spell on Angelina or something like that is not helping at all. It's just dumb. I think the problem with Winter is this character they've stuck her with. She does play it well, but I think she's focusing so much on the character that it ends up superseding her wrestling, which makes her matches not as good as they should be. Remember when they signed cheerleader Melissa and stuck her with the Raisha Saeed gimmick? Same thing. I guess the silver lining in this is that it's keeping the beautiful people away from the title picture for the time being, thank God. But you know that won't last long because they're basically the only other team that Sarita and Rosita have to feud with. I mean, they really need more girls because with the Knockout roster stretched so thin right now, they've got no choice but to try to get way more mileage out of these storylines and feuds than they should. Perfect example, the Mickie James Madison Rayne feud. And maybe I was a little over the top when I discussed Madison Rayne last week. And some people kind of got on my case for it, but I don't really care. This is my coping mechanism, okay? Madison Rayne is a passable talker, although I think a lot of people make her out to be better than she really is. But in the ring, she's got nothing going on. At best, she is a serviceable mid-carder, but she's not someone who should be pushed to the moon, and she's certainly not someone you build your division around because she's not that talented. The Knockout division has been lousy for the last year since she won the title. Do you think that's a coincidence? Madison Rayne sucks. She's done nothing to warrant the push she's gotten. I've said this over and over and over again, and now I'm bored, and I'm going to have some fun with it. I'm going to crack some jokes, I'm going to poke fun at her, make myself laugh, hopefully make some other people laugh too. This is how I'm going to cope with this chick while she's on my screen. You don't like it? TS. Holy shit, we had an X Division match this week, folks. It was Max Buck versus Jeremy Buck. Pretty short, only 4 minutes long, but goddamn, those were 4 fun minutes and I'll take them. The only thing is, this was apparently the dissolution of Generation Me, but the build-up for this was completely thrown under the bus. They teased it a little bit at the Fayetteville show, a little bit more at the last pay-per-view. They disappeared from TV for weeks without even being mentioned, and then they do a breakup angle. I mean, they had this video package that tried to make the issues between these guys seem like a bigger deal than the writers made them out to be, with Jeremy saying that Max has been pushing him around his whole life, but we weren't privy to any of that. There were no vignettes or angles to build up to this. We haven't seen or heard from either of these guys since Ultimate X. This was a completely half-assed way to break these guys up. Good match, though. Then they had a match where Kurt Angle squashed Rob Terry in 90 seconds. And that was perfectly fine with me, because Kurt Angle should plow through that idiot in 90 seconds or less. But, and I'm sorry I keep coming back to this, but why does TNA keep featuring Rob Terry? They know this guy sucks. You know they know he sucks. It's obvious. I can't even remember the last time they booked him to win a match. When he does wrestle, usually he's beaten in short order and completely embarrassed. And yet they keep talking him up like he's this huge badass killer that they want us to perceive as this massive threat to anyone on the roster, up to and including Kurt Angle, and no one believes that. No one believes that Rob Terry can beat anyone at this point. Here, they had this ridiculous pre-tape where Jarrett and Bischoff were rubbing their hands together in evil glee, like, oh, we're gonna put Kurt in the ring with Rob Terry, and Terry's gonna fuck his shit up. Terry's gonna hurt him so bad his grandkids will feel it. And then Kurt taps him out in 90 seconds. What are you doing? This guy is awful. He has no talent to speak of. None. You know it. Just get rid of him. Then, of course, Kurt went after Jarrett, but he got arrested because Jeff and Karen filed a false police report against him, on camera no less. somehow I doubt they'll face any legal repercussions for that. Anyway, it's good to see that they're not devoting too much time to this storyline anymore. Since Fayetteville, we seem to be over the hump with this feud now, and that's definitely a big plus. They beat us to death with the Jeff Karen thing, and now less is more until they finish this off at Lockdown. Then they had the cage match main event. Duh. I feel weird saying this because I'm always saying that the matches on this show are too short, but they gave us a long main event for once, and it's not even really a match. It was pretty much just an extended, overbooked beatdown, and I guess that's excusable since you don't want to give away too much before Lockdown, but still, this annoyed me. And one thing that just made me want to fucking scream was the Hogan thing. Old man Hogan hobbles out to the ring, single-handedly beats up Ken Anderson and throws him into the cage. So, Ken Anderson, who's supposed to be one of your top guys, just got his ass kicked by a crippled 60-year-old man in a back brace. He's gonna headline Lockdown, you know. I fucking hate Hogan. God, it's the same shit over and over again with that egomaniac. So that part was fucking ridiculous, but the cool stuff came after the match. Babyfaces are getting beaten down, then Fortune show up and they get beat down, but then Christopher Daniels shows up and takes out all the heels with that huge crossbody. That was awesome. Great to see Daniels back. Will they book him right this time? Probably not, but still good to see him back. It's really weird, though. There's a lot of idiots on Twitter who are acting like he just vanished from the wrestling business for the last year. He's been in ROH, you morons. Then they did a bunch of interviews afterward, and these were really good, but I think it would have been better if they'd ended the show with Daniels and just saved that stuff for next week. And the cliffhanger was a more compelling ending. Also, I didn't really buy Daniels' reason for coming back. He said he came back because of what Immortal did to AJ. Alright, but correct me if I'm wrong, weren't AJ and Daniels enemies the last time he was there? I guess that's just a nitpick, but whatever, it's not really a big deal. But you know what? All things considered, this was not a bad show. By Impact standards, this was pretty decent. If there's one thing I would have changed, it was that Sting-Anderson brawl in the middle of the show, because it went on too long and it feels like these guys are just getting their hands on each other way too much before the Lockdown match. Aside from that, I enjoyed Impact this week. And it's really nice to be able to say that again, finally. I don't expect it to last, but Daniels is back, they're finally doing something with Magnus, Motor City Machine Guns and Amazing Red are back at Lockdown, and that puts me in a good mood. So, while not excusing the stupid stuff, I will give this show a passing grade. See you next week.